Hi, I'm Amy Hannon, and nothing thrills me more than people and food. I'm a preacher's wife, a mom of 3, and I own my own specialty kitchen store. I've kept an open door and a well-stocked fridge, which means I have fed a lot of mouths over the years. So welcome to my kitchen. This is Cooking Today. Hi, how is everybody today? Welcome to my kitchen. We're glad you're with me again today. We are making shepherd's pie. I just love shepherd's pie. I love comfort food. I don't know if y'all figure that out, but I do. Love comfort food. And you know, this is kind of the time of year where it's like kind of warm in the day, but still can be really cool at night. Like I burned a fire like 2 nights ago. You just kind of never know what you're gonna get, and this is comfort. And so I just kind of decided that maybe we needed to squeak in a little bit more kind of good, heavy food before we get to summer. And this is one of those really great comforting dishes that I really love to make. And I have done my own little personal spin on the top. It's really, really good. So let me tell you a little bit about what we've got going on. We've prepped a lot, and we have a lot going on the stove. And so I just want to let y'all know what we've got. We have our carrots cut up, and we have some frozen peas that I'm just letting sit out for just a few minutes. We've shredded a little cheese. We're gonna top our shepherd's pie with pie crust, pastry. Isn't that so good? Don't we love pastry? I sure do, and it gets so good up on there on top, and it's just a tiny, tiny bit, but that good brown crust is delicious, y'all. Just kind of adds one more layer of fantasticness to this pie. What I have here is ground beef. Let me get my good little chopping spoon. And actually, you know what? I'm gonna do this first. I'm gonna do my onions first. We have just a medium onion that we've got chopped, and I have some oil that we've already kind of got going on the stove. Hot, hot, hot. So let me get these in here. And then back to our ground beef. This is kind of an interesting little nugget of information for you about shepherd's pie. Generally speaking, shepherd's pie is made with lamb. That's why it's called a shepherd's pie, because sheep. We don't really just love lamb. My husband doesn't love it. My kids don't just love it. And so I'm using actually just a ground beef, like an 80-20, because we do want a little bit of that fat, and it makes it super tender. I mean, just that little bit of extra fat in the meat just makes this really nice and tender on the inside. If you wanted to use lamb, then you can. You can find ground lamb, you know, at your grocery or your butcher. You can use that. Officially speaking, that would make it shepherd's pie. We're referring to it as shepherd's pie because everybody kind of, you know, associates with that. But technically, if we were all British, which we're not, or Irish, we would call this a cottage pie because we've chosen to use beef instead of lamb. But for all, you know, good reason and measure and common sense over here in the United States, we know it is shepherd's pie, and I'm using beef. So we're just gonna go for it, okay? It's good. You put mashed potatoes on the top of anything like this, and I don't care what you call it. It's delicious. Okay, so I have gone ahead and just put my onions down inside my oil, and I'm gonna let them just start to get a little tiny, tiny bit of color and translucent. And I'm gonna go ahead and put in my ground beef. And what I have here is about, I don't know, a little bit shy of 2 pounds, maybe about 1.5 pounds or so. And I'm gonna put this in here and give it a chop, 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 and let that kind of cook down. And what I also have going on the stove in my big pot over here is boiling salted, heavily salted water. Heavily salted is kind of the key, because we're gonna boil some yummy, yummy gold potatoes and put them on the top, mash them, and do cream and butter and all that good stuff, and put them as a layer on top, which is traditionally how a shepherd's pie or a cottage pie is made. And so I've got that water boiling, and remember the tip that if you put your lid on top of your pot while you're waiting for your water to boil, that residual heat will help your water boil quicker. So we've got that going, and I can see the steam coming out right this second of my pot. And I've gone ahead and cut up I don't know, couple of big cups of just yellow potatoes. You can kind of use as many or as few potatoes as you want. If you want a big hearty layer, then you just double that up and go for it. If you need to feed a crowd, this will do the trick. And all you have to do is just double up the potatoes, that potato layer, because it's really an expensive way to kind of beef this up. Does that make sense? You can kind of double up the potatoes and layer it on top of this meat mixture. And it will actually stick to your ribs just a little bit more and go a little bit further. Okay, I'm going to let that, I've kind of got the big pieces kind of broken up. And I'm going to let that just kind of go a little. And I've got my heat on about medium. And the fat from the beef will actually continue to kind of cook and soften the onions in there, and so that'll get some really great flavor. So because this takes a little bit of time, I'm going to go ahead and put our potatoes in with our good heavy salted water. And the reason I say heavily salted water is because the potatoes just don't have a lot of salt in them, and so you want the salt to be super duper duper, or the water to be super duper salty. And so we're going to spoon those in and put the lid back on them and let them boil. When we come back, we're going to keep going. This is Cooking Today.
Cooking Today, sponsored by West Rock Coffee Company.
Hi, welcome back. We're making shepherd's pie today. Doesn't that sound so good? I sure love comfort food. This is a good one, y'all. It's a meat and potatoes meal. It's all in one dish. Bakes really, really pretty. It's hearty, and there's all these good layers. So good, y'all. Let me tell you what we've got going on in case you're just joining us. We have yellow potatoes that we've just cubed and put in some very, very salted boiling water. And so we're going to let those get nice and tender. And I have like almost 2 pounds or so of ground beef on the stove that is sauteing with, garlic does that every time. I need to probably take it easy on my pounds, don't I? I have garlic that we're going to actually put in with our ground beef and our onions. And you know, you don't want to ever add garlic at the very beginning because it will burn so quickly, and you really only want garlic to cook until it becomes fragrant. And as soon as you can really smell it, then it's really time to go ahead and get some liquid on it, or it'll burn up and it turns black in these itty bitty pieces, and you can't pick it out. You've lost your dish. So just be really mindful and careful when you're using garlic. So we're going to add this garlic kind of at the end after our beef is kind of getting nice and brown. So I'm just pounding that out and giving this just a little chop, not much. And I did 2 small cloves because this garlic was, this little clove was a little bit small. So I'm going to put these on my knife, and we're just going to slide these in. Because see, if you can see, my ground beef is just about cooked. Okay? So we're going to put that in, and it's going to cook in that, that little bit of fat that's down in there from our beef and get nice and tender. And we're going to smell it here pretty quick. And then the next thing, this is just kind of how you cook. The next thing you would want to put in there is whatever kind of takes the longest to cook or get tender is what you would want to naturally put in next, which is going to be some of our little chopped carrots. You can use big, long, full-size carrots if you want and cut them down, or do whatever you want. Cube them if you would like. You could even use frozen carrots, y'all, if you wanted. Like they have those pretty crinkle-cut carrots, or the little cubes that are frozen, and that would cut this, even this little bit of prep time, it would cut it down a lot, as a matter of fact. And I just did some little skinny kind of organic carrots to make these little tiny kind of discs. They're really sweet. We love carrot bites. I think in the recipe I have use about a cup or so of carrots, but this is probably more like a cup and a half. I love the color of the orange, and I love that little sweet bite. My husband loves carrots, and so I'm just going to kind of load them in. So let me check and make sure that we have all of our, looks like our beef is nice and brown. Okay, and so next I'm going to put in my carrots and let those cook a little bit. And this is going to bake in the oven So we don't want them to cook down till they're mush right now because they're going to get even mushier in the oven. So you want them to kind of get tender, but don't cook them too long because, then we have a texture issue, and we don't want the texture issue, do we? Okay, so let's check our potatoes in our well-salted water. I'm going to give that a little stir, and they need to keep going. I can tell that they're still real firm. I'll let that keep going. And then also, let me just point out that what I have on the back burner is whole milk and a stick of salted butter, because I like the salted butter with the potatoes, because again, potatoes need salt. It's what makes them taste so good. And so anytime I can use salt to get into this mashed potato layer, then I'm going to use it on this one. So we have that heated on the back burner so that once our potatoes are nice and boiled, then we can just drain them really easily and pour in our warm, yummy milk and butter. And it will just incorporate, and it stays nice and warm. It's delicious, y'all. Okay, so these are cooking. We've got our garlic. The garlic smells so good. And then what I have here are some frozen peas. We don't want to add these right away because the frozen peas will actually get pretty mushy. And if you stir them, then they can kind of come apart a little bit. And I like to get the baby peas or like an early pea because they're a little bit smaller and they're so sweet. They're so much sweeter to me than like the big full-size peas. And y'all, I don't know what it is, but I sure like that they're little. Are you that way too? Like a little cute thing. It's like a cute little baby mini. And my kids, you know how kids are with peas, they don't love the texture, so I kind of feel like the smaller they are, the easier it is to kind of sneak it into a dish so that, they'll eat it and that it's kind of smoke and mirrors. It's like a trick, but it's delicious and they're good for you. Okay, we are working on it. Everything is looking really, really good. And these carrots, because I cut them really small and thin, they've gotten nice and tender. So what I'm gonna do next, we're gonna thicken our sauce. We're gonna add some really, really good flavor into this base. And when we come back, we're gonna start putting it all together and then we'll stick it in the oven. It's the best lunch, best dinner ever. This is Cooking Today.
Iced tea, sponsored by Lipton.
Hi, we're back. We are wrapping up shepherd's pie today, and it is so good. Let me tell you what we've got going. Our potatoes were nice and boiled and fork tender, and the skins just started to separate. So I've pulled those over here. I have about a cup and a half or so of a good, fresh, shredded white cheddar. It's kind of a medium. And then I have our warm butter and cream that's sitting right here, our milk, so that we can just kind of make some good creamy mashed potatoes in just a second. But we also have our ground beef and I went ahead and put in our peas at the very end without stirring them to death. We don't want them to get all mashed up and yucky. So we've let those cook down. And what I want to do next is probably about a half a cup of flour or so, maybe so. And what I want to do there is pour a little of that flour on top of our ground beef, because what that will do when we add our liquid in, our beef stock, is it will actually thicken and give us a little bit more of like a gravy base rather than it being too soupy. So I've done a little shake of flour, and I've got my heat down on kind of a low simmer or so. We want some heat, but we don't want it to like keep cooking. Okay, then what I'm gonna do is add some beef stock to our mixture here. And you can measure this. It's probably about 2 cups. But basically what you want to have is you want to have enough that it covers covers it. We don't want it to be just in the bottom. We want it to kind of be equal so that it just kind of covers the filling. I think that's pretty good. I'm going to leave the cap off just in case I decide I need to do a little more. And remember how I said we need to salt and pepper like crazy? This is when you're going to want to do that. Yeah, look, okay, so see right here, look, if I were to spread that all down kind of nice and equal, the beef stock kind of covers it just right so that we just kind of have just enough. We don't want it soupy and we don't want it to be too beefy. We want a good little gravy on there. And by adding that flour to it, that's what will give us that kind of gravy. And I've turned my heat back up to about medium, because the heat on the liquid with the flour is what's going to kind of thicken it a little. I'm going to add a squeeze or so of tomato paste. And I'm going to do a dash of Worcestershire. That's something I just kind of threw in. It's not even, I don't even think it's in the recipe, so, but we just kind of like this flavor in a lot of our tomato-y based, beef broth based dishes. Gonna give that a little stir, and then we're gonna salt, 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 and pepper, 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 okay? Salt it, salt it, salt it, and then pepper, pepper, pepper. If you wanted to add a little bit of cayenne in there, you could certainly do it. Whatever you love, you can add it in, and then just taste as you go. So I'm gonna give this a little stir, and we're gonna let this kind of go, finish at a little simmer until the, you know, the liquid in it thickens just a little bit, okay? So we're just gonna let that go. So I have our potatoes here, and they've cooled just a little bit. And I'm gonna pour some of the liquid on here and put our cheese in. I love the cheese in the potatoes, don't you? Have y'all made that pork chop yet with the Gruyere mashed potatoes? If you haven't, it's time. I mean it. It is delicious. I actually got a text last night from a good friend of mine, Rachel, and she, it was late. It was probably like 10 o'clock at night, and she said, oh my gosh, I made that. And it was awesome. I was like, thank you. Okay, so I'm just gonna mash these. And what I kind of like is for this to be a little bit chunky. Let me tell you, this is a great little shortcut. I'm making homemade mashed potatoes, but this is a piece of cake with potato flakes, like instant potato flakes. You're not gonna have this texture, and you won't have the skins, which I kind of like the rustic of it, but it's easy. And there's a ton of flavor in those store-bought, you know, mashed potatoes. Or you could even go to your deli. Like you could even run to your like HARPS deli and get that mashed potato that they have in there. Delicious. Okay, salt like crazy, pepper like crazy. You know, potatoes don't have any flavor, so we have to put it in. And we've done that with some of the cream and the butter and that cheese. Okay, y'all, we're about to put it all together. We have a puff pastry, just a single sheet, that is room temperature. We've kind of let it thaw according to the package directions. I'm going to add my rosemary in at the very end. So we have this puff pastry that comes frozen, and you just kind of let it thaw at room temperature for a little bit. And we're just going to open this up. And I'm just going to kind of pat it out a little bit, just so that it kind of goes around the rim. And we're just going to kind of tuck. I'm not going to cut it. I'm not going to make it beautiful or pretty or fancy or anything. It's going to be kind of rustic. I'm only using my fingers. And we're just going to kind of lay it over, toss it over, whatever. I'm going to scoot this off, and we're just about ready to assemble. Okay. So we have our liquid that has thickened a little. Oh yes, you can hear it and you can see how that has got nice and thick and delicious. We're gonna put that inside our beautiful dish, smear the top of it loaded with mashed potatoes, cover it with puff pastry, and call it a day. Stick it in our oven. When we come back, we're gonna see this beautiful finished product. This is Cooking Today. Did you know that more kitchen accidents happen from knives being too dull instead of being too sharp? I think that people think that if you have an extra sharp knife, you're going to be more likely to cut yourself, but that's actually not the case. Sharp knives do the trick. They cut right through whatever you're trying to cut, and it's dull knives that will actually slip off of what you're trying to cut, and then you're more likely to have a kitchen accident. So be sure to always sharpen your knives. Have a good sharp knife, and you should be accident-free. Hi, welcome back. You should smell it in here. Oh my goodness, our shepherd's pie is done. I'm gonna take it out of the oven. We baked it at 375 for about 20 minutes. Then I increased the temperature. Oh, y'all, look how pretty. I increased the temperature to 400 and baked it for like another 10 minutes or so just to get a nice, beautiful golden brown right here on top. And let me just recap for you what we did. So we put our beef mixture down inside this beautiful pot dish, spread it nice and level. Then we smeared a little layer of our yummy mashed potatoes right on top. And then I just literally pressed a puff pastry sheet just down on. It doesn't have to be perfect. It wasn't even crimped. It just laid nice and pretty right on top, kind of a neat organic way. And it's got these great points and it's just so neat and rustic. I mean, it smells so good. And then right before I put it in the oven, I took that little bit of like cream and butter that we had melted to put on the potatoes that we mixed in. And there was just enough in the bottom, and I just brushed it right on top of this beautiful crust so that it got this nice, rich, gorgeous golden brown. Look at that beauty, y'all, right there. You're gonna wanna let that sit at room temperature for just a few minutes, just so that it's not smoking hot when you eat it. Don't wanna burn your mouth because you wanna enjoy every bite. This is Cooking Today.
Cooking Today, sponsored by West Rock Coffee Company. Kitchenware is provided by Una Mays. Groceries provided by HARPS, Hometown Fresh.